this is an adventure that I finished running on Tuesday. I was running it when my main cast, if somebody was out and we didn't want to play Tomb of Annihilation, um, I whipped and prepared this up 1 week, and I was like, all right, let's run this. And everybody agreed, so we ran it. It took 2 sessions to get through, which is something that the adventure itself doesn't say, but I kind of just reading over it, you could tell that it was going to take more than one. It's kind of like 2 adventures combined. So this is an adventure, 5th edition adventure, and it's made by DMDave. I'm a big fan of his stuff. So check out his Patreon. He's got a bunch of good stuff on there, and I get a lot of adventures from him. Like every month, I download a bunch of PDFs, and he's also started doing Foundry things, so you don't even have to prep it. I'm dumb, and I'm gonna show you what I did with this one, where I had the files to just import it into Foundry, and I didn't know I had the files, so I ended up just prepping it manually, which is no big deal. It took me about 3-4 hours ish, but I didn't know I had the files that I could just upload and be done. So do that. Don't do what I did. But anyway, so this is 4 characters up to level 7. Recommended for level 7. I ran it with level 7s. Worked out fine. There was one trouble spot, and we'll get to that, but there's just one trouble spot. Also, spoilers if you're playing or planning on playing in a game this adventure. I'm going to be talking about spoilers, so just get out of there. So, I mean, I'm not going to do like a line by line, but the main hook of this adventure is that there's a gnome named Warble Sparkcoil who's crafting this giant mechanical gnome. And there's a couple hooks here that you use. I used the one where it was an intelligence agency hired the characters to infiltrate the Warbus laboratory to figure out what he's building in there, and if necessary, destroy it. Blah blah blah. We were running it as a one-shot, so reward doesn't really matter because it's a one-shot. So, Mystery Island is the place it takes where it takes place, but of course you can plop it anywhere in your campaign setting, whatever. Warble Sparkcoil is a good name though. I wouldn't change that, and I didn't. So the 2 parts of the adventure are, the first one is the workshop, and the second part is the Mechagnome itself. So you start by, well, let's pull the map up. Here we go. There's the map. So they start here in the middle. And this is basically like an abandoned mine shaft. So that's like how they infiltrated this place. The way it ran with my group, it ran fine. They got to here. They spent the minute it took to carve themselves out of here. There's a neat encounter here with 4 books that come to life and just start whacking them. And then there's also a smothering rug on the ground, and that is a great, like, intro, because it's like, they walk in, it just looks like a library, they're not expected to fight anything, but now they have to fight books, and then also the rug doesn't activate until round 2, so then you get a delayed, like, here's another thing. It's really neat. One thing that I do have a little bit minor gripe with this adventure, knowing what I do now, and maybe if I read it a little more thoroughly, I probably would just have made these doors either completely locked and they wouldn't be able to get in there. It's a big red herring for this adventure, and it actually took up about an half hour to 45 minutes of my playtime of them trying to figure out like what's going on here. And the thing is it's not relevant to the adventure at all. It's just there's some mechanical stuff, there's some checks, and they could spend like, I think it's like a certain amount of weeks studying it to like open this portal to another dimension, and then it just literally tells you the dimension you can go anywhere you want it to go. So if you were putting this in a main camp, if you were putting this adventure in a large campaign, this would be something maybe cool to have so that they can go back to it and maybe use it to go to another portal to another world or something. But for a one-shot, as I was running it, it's completely useless and a red herring, and it just distracted my players. So, I probably would have made it much harder for them to get into this room, just so that they didn't get distracted by it. But they got distracted by it. It took some time, and eventually I kind of pushed them subtly, like kind of nudge them that whatever you're trying to do is going to take longer than you have. Go find the thing they're building. So they went on. There's some cute little levers in this room. Each lever opens up a different kind of section of the map. 10 is where they want to go. That's like where they can go to the next floor. Also, or how they continue on. 8 and 9. 8 has an encounter with a crazy mage. That went fine. The mage was supposed to animate like a knife to attack the player parties with them. I ended up not using that little bit of the encounter because the way they were kind of like, they were kind of yelling at the mage from the door. So I had the mage toss a fireball at him, which was fun and surprising for them. They ended up just killing it immediately after. Like, it's just a mage, so, and it was a crazy one. I didn't have mage armor, just wrecked it. Waiting in here, if they make any noise in this room, there's an assassin in here that will move to room 7, lock that door, and just kind of wait for them. They opened this door quietly, so the assassin was in here. I had him hiding. No, I didn't have him hiding. I just had him standing right there, and then he turned, and he just struck out at him. Actually, you know what? If I remember correctly, he didn't strike at him. He just bounced back out. But anyway, it was a pretty easy fight. It's just a single assassin. They caught the assassin off guard, so that's great. The problem with assassins comes later, because they're used again in this adventure. Again, this is kind of, there's a little bit of background of who, this is Warbus's main office. They get a little information out of here. This room's basically, I could have put treasure and things in there, and there was like some treasure for them to take, but it was, I mean, there wasn't really anything in there. Like, it was kind of a waste of a room, but that's fine. This one had a big encounter with these mechs that were basically just reskinned. One was reskinned steam mephits, which are awesome. I love steam mephits. And then the other one was just a reskinned baboon. It said to use the sets of a baboon, but make it a mechanical. That's fine. It was just a fight. They fought it. Moved on. So one thing, if you notice on the map, there's no door here. There's actually supposed to be a door here, and it's supposed to be locked. So that kind of caught me off guard. I had to quickly draw a door there and block that off, because the way they unlock the door is by sabotaging the equipment in here, which starts another fight. Also, there's this there's something hiding in here, or not hiding in here, but there's a living creature in there, a person, and if they destroy the equipment in this room, it basically turns the power off, and then he dies in there. So it's kind of like this, you can kind of have this moral quandary where he's like, oh, he looks like he's hooked up to this equipment. And then it's like, oh, well, you could probably shut down the equipment, unlocking the door to area 10, but that might kill him. My players tried to break him out of there. I had him die anyway. I didn't want him wandering around. He just died when they had... It was basically damned if you do, damned if you don't. He was gonna die. These rooms, there were some NPCs, some of them talkative. I had an orc in here who was tongueless, a tongueless orc, so he couldn't talk. Then there was another person here that was giving a gnome, who used to be part of the workshop. Just, it was interesting. He was the way that kind of told them how to move on to the next area, so that's how I used them. They let him go. And then the next area is the workshop itself. These doors are locked, basically, and they can't get through them unless it's like I think it's like a DC 20 check, so they could get through it if they pass the check, but otherwise they have to kind of take the long way around. There's some sleeping gnome commoners basically in here that they can talk to or try to get some information out of. Another one is in here getting attacked by one of those mechs that has gone crazy, and you can save him and then get some information that way. That's how my players discovered this secret pathway, which they took to get into this room. And this is where the mech is. The mech starts right here, the giant gnome mech. It's I think it's like 35 feet. It's 35 feet by 50 feet, and then I think it's like 80 to 100 feet tall. It's labeled as gargantuan in the stat block, which we'll go to the stat block and we'll talk about that. I really like how the Mechagnome was made. But basically, there's a small fight that happens in here, and then the Mechagnome activates. I had it when the Mechagnome activates. Basically, I had him walk through this southern wall and leave. And when that happens, it makes the whole area collapse, and they have to make dex saves or take damage. and that's where I ended the first session. So doing this whole thing was one, I think 3.5 hour session. Fine, perfectly good little dungeon romp. Worked great. So, I mean, this is all the text. I have nothing to complain about here. It's all well written out. It's a DMDave adventure. It's really, like, organized really well. I rarely had problems finding the things that I needed to find. See, like, this is that observatory room, which has all this information that basically just sums up to nothing that's relevant to the adventure. So, so it's just, I would probably just scratch that if I was running it again as a one-shot. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. So now we get to the second half, which is the Mechagnome itself. So what I did that's not included in this adventure is, the Mechagnome activated and walked away. Basically, it was walking away from them. And you could do this Theater of the Mind, but what I did is I made a big giant battle map that had just grass on it, and I put a mech token that was a big-ass mech token, and basically there was a fight with the Mechagnome. I had them roll initiative, and you're fighting this Mechagnome. And basically they were going to fight the Mechagnome until they figured out how to get inside of it. And it worked perfectly, because as soon as the Mechagnome was able to turn around, and I'll get into how the Mechagnome works, because it's... Actually, we'll do that now while we're talking about it. The Mechagnome, here's the stat sheet for it. So, gargantuan vehicle, 35 feet... Oh, he's 200 feet tall. Alright, I kind of made him shorter. Oh, well, he's a gnome. He could be short. So this is how... I believe this is how Wizards of the Coast does all of their, vehicles now, and it's like a vehicle stat block, which is kind of interesting. So they have 20 crew, 60 passengers, it weighs a certain amount, and it has a speed 72. That doesn't really matter too much unless you're doing long distance travel. It's got strength, dex, and con. It doesn't have any what's it called? It doesn't have any of this stuff. Has some damage immunities, which is fire, poison, psychic, and then bludgeoning from non-magical attacks that are adamantine. So when I was running this, only 1 or 2 people had magical weapons, so only 1 or 2 of them was actually doing physical damage to it during the fight, which worked out great. One thing I messed up, and I couldn't I couldn't retcon on because I messed it up like for 2 or 3 rounds in a row, is I missed that it had a damage threshold. So the way a damage threshold works, if you've never used it, is it will take no damage unless it's 20 or more. Damage. So that means if you do 19 damage to it in one hit, it does 0 damage. So I forgot about this, but it was no big deal. I let them wail away on the feet. They did about 100 damage to the feet. But about when they hit so it says -5 feet per 50 damage taken. The way I kind of nudged them towards going inside the Mechagnome was when they hit this first threshold, the first 50 damage taken, I had the door on the foot swing open, basically. Like, they did enough damage where the door just came open. And then after they took 1 or 2 eye lasers and realized that maybe they shouldn't be going toe-to-toe to this thing, they all kind of just ran right inside the foot, and that was perfect. I wouldn't use this poison cloud attack on them unless you wanted to kill them. It's pretty powerful. Actually, now I'm looking at it. Maybe I should have used it. It actually wasn't as powerful as the eye lasers. I was hitting them with eye lasers. Oh well. I thought the poison cloud was going to do more damage, that's why I ignored it. But anyway, but it only gets to do this once, so I kind of was just holding on to it once a day, see? And then, what's neat about vehicles that I noticed here is, it has a hull, which is basically its HP, so it has 500 HP, and the hull has a damage threshold of 25. Then it's got a helmet with 200 HP and a damage threshold of 10, but a higher armor class, 25 armor class. That's high for level 7 creatures. Not many people are gonna be hitting that. The feet, 20 AC is fine. They were able to hit it plenty fine since I ignored the damage threshold. And honestly, I'd recommend that. Ignore the damage threshold for the feet. Let them beat up the feet and let them break their way into the feet. Like, that's fine, in my opinion. Otherwise, they have to, like, roll perception to find the secret door on the feet, I think. And then, like, what do they... I don't know. Or you can make it swing open or make it very obvious there's a door there. Yeah, it doesn't really say exactly how the doors are hidden or if they're hidden. So, and then the eye lasers, they hit for 88 force damage. That was a good amount of damage. The range is basically forever. I gave the eye lasers a cone of vision, which kind of forced the mech to have to turn, and then I also had a facing for the mech. So, because it said, the reason why I did that was because during its move action, it says it can use its helm to move with its feet. But it did say something about only being able to turn 90 degrees. So what this tells me is that orientation of the Mechagnome mattered. So I made it so it's like it can't shoot its eye lasers unless you're in front of it, and I gave it a 90-foot or a 90-degree cone in front of it that it can shoot its eye lasers, which was cool. And then I also made it like glow on the ground a little bit, kind of like an MMO RPG fight, so that my players would know if they're in or outside of the threat of the laser, so they could kind of position themselves better, give them a fighting chance. But, like, there's no beating this. Like, this isn't a fight. Like, unless they come up with some crazy plan to go toe-to-toe with this thing, they probably shouldn't be fighting it. So the fight went, and they got in the foot, and the adventure started off in this foot. So, the one thing I'll complain about with this, and while I was running it, is there's a whole lot of, like, nothing going on in some of these rooms. Like a whole lot of nothing, which is fine. But like I felt myself telling my players, or like investigating, I'm like, yeah, there's nothing else in here except some machinery that's whirring away that you don't know what it does. And that's like this room, this room, this room, all these tiny rooms around the edge here. This room has an encounter in it if you mess with anything, I believe. And then actually I think this had an encounter in it too. One of the encounters they never triggered. They triggered this one. They didn't trigger this one. This one had a bunch of those, more of those Steam Mephit flying robots. This one had one of those apes and two of those robots. So there was a small fight there. So the problem, here's where, like, it went south for my group, is in 8 and 9, there's two more assassin gnomes hiding in these rooms, but they're not really hiding. The way the book says, they're like the here, let's go to 8 and 9 here. There are lieutenants. So there's Lieutenant Helix and Lieutenant Gulp. They're both assassins. So the way the adventure says is if they sabotage any of the equipment in any of the lower floors here, they will wait in room 7 to ambush them. So when they went up this elevator to get to this room, I had the assassins ambush them. And first turn, I knocked basically 2 of them down. 2 of them were standing. They couldn't take out these assassins. And so I had the assassins basically capture them, and also I had them allow them to stabilize the 2 that they knocked out. So now there's 2 of my players were knocked out, and 2 of my players were captured, basically. I had them put handcuffs on all of them and confiscate all their weapons, and bring them upstairs. So then they got to go with these lieutenants through the rest of the adventure, which was fine. There's just some drunk gnome scientists playing cards here, some more drunk gnome scientists playing cards here. Again, not too much variation here. One of these had a trap that could go off that one of the gnomes could set off, but it would kill them too. So I'm like, that's a like drastic move. I think it was this room has that. That never came into play. And took them all the way up to this 12 room up here that had 2 more gnome scientists that were basically they were the ones controlling the mech. And when they brought him up here, they went to talk to the leader, and then there was some shenanigans where they tricked one of them into thinking the other one was working with them and got him killed. Because I needed to take these assassins away some ways. Then two of them escaped. The two that were conscious escaped, and it became this really... This is where it got really interesting, and it had really nothing to do with how the adventure was formed, and it was just all of me just making shit up on the fly. It became a cat and mouse chase, where one of them ran away, the one lieutenant chased after him, and they started... Basically, he got away, got to the elevator shaft, went all the way to the bottom floor, and hid in a room and waited. And then I had the assassin trying to track him and look for him, and he had to go floor by floor looking for him. Then there was another mage up here that was babysitting the other one. When she turned her back for a moment or went to the other room, the other one ran out, and then that was another chase that was kind of happening. So there was this two chases that were happening. A cool moment happened down here where my player was like, can I grapple him? As he walked into the room and didn't see him because his stealth was too high. I'm like, yeah, you can grapple him. So he grapples him and then basically smashes his head into, well, I described that room as having like moving pistons going up and down. So he's like, I smashed his head into one of the pistons. And I was just like, oh, wow. So I just pulled 10d10 out of my butt as bludgeoning damage, because I'd imagine a mechanical piston going up and down would not be kind to somebody's head. Almost killed him. The gnome got 2 attacks off that missed, and then he killed him the next turn by finishing him off with the piston. Really cool moment. My players all loved it. My 2 unconscious players on this floor were loving watching my 2 other players run around and try to do this. What ended up happening is, I believe the one that was smashed the heads ended up making his way back up here, tried to rescue these guys. I had the mage come out and go, what are you guys doing? And I'm like, well, she casts Cone of Cold. And they're like, that's the end of it. I'm like, yeah, that's the end of the fight. She casts Cone of Cold. You guys are all dead. I gave them plenty of chances to potentially escape, but like I was like, at this point, no, they would probably die. But the last player left standing left the mech and started climbing up its body on the outside. Why? I don't know. But it made for this cool moment. He infiltrated through the ear, came up here, tried to sabotage what was going on, started a fight, ran into the other room, and then he eventually succumbed to battle and died. I had him roll all of his death saves. I had the others roll their death saves. Only one of them... Basically, I didn't have the gnomes finish him off. I had them just, like, ditch him out into a field. Where they just woke up 24 hours later. So, they ended up failing the quest of destroying the Mechagnome. But it was a cool adventure, and everybody had fun. Everybody liked it. So... I would say I recommend this adventure. I think it's really good. There's some stuff that maybe I would go in and maybe put some more interesting things in here if I wanted to. I would also probably, like I said, I would lock off this section of it, or maybe add something more relevant to the current adventure there. And really the rest of it is fine. The assassin there is fine. Everything else, maybe put an item in here. Like a magic item that would help them fight the Mechagnome would be kind of cool. Or something. Yeah, good adventure. I don't know if I'm supposed to give things scores. I give this, my gut is saying 8 out of 10. It's 8 out of a 10 adventure. Yeah. I'd run it again.